Bucky Irving, Trey Benson, all the injuries that we are dealing with right now at running back combined with the buys means you're going to have to start the most disgusting names that we've ever heard this week. Obviously, the S-tier running backs are still amazing. We're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs, the RB1 in our rankings this week. We have a great matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Detroit Lions project to be the highest scoring offense on the week with an implied team total of 30 points. Gibbs has showed you that even in these blowout games, he's still going to be a great running back this year, where you do have a much higher percentage of his team's backfield opportunities than what we saw with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. Now, clearly McCaffrey is going to be the RB1 for us the majority of weeks. The issue that you're going to have with McCaffrey this week is it's a tough matchup going up against the Rams. Brock Purdy's been ruled out. There are a multitude of injuries in San Francisco. Right now, his higher lower on Underdog Fantasy is about 18.5 points, which obviously would be lower than any week we've seen so far this season, where CMC is averaging about 10 targets per game. I just don't like that. You're still starting him regardless, right? All these S-tier running backs you're starting. Jonathan Taylor, you're starting. With Taylor, he scaled back from about 30 points per game in weeks 2 and 3 to only 14.5 against the Rams this past week. But the realistic setup is much better going up against the Raiders now. And honestly, Jonathan Taylor would have had just a fine performance last week if it wasn't for the fact that we have the Adonai Mitchell holding call, pulling back like a 50-yard rushing touchdown from JT. And then James Cook has been a running back one every single week so far this year. He has scored a rushing touchdown, I want to say every weekend since like week 14 last season. He's had 3 straight games with over 100 rushing yards. Right now, his higher lower for rushing yards is 81.5 on Underdog. Now, let's move to A tier. And maybe you would say, oh, okay, the Miami Dolphins offense is going to struggle. You have no Tyreek. Tua's not good. Well, they play one of the worst defenses in the league this week going up against the Carolina Panthers. So Devon Achane's actually in a really, really good spot. Like Achane's higher, lower, like 100.5 total yards on Underdog at the moment. And current sportsbooks actually have the Miami Dolphins projected to score just as many points as the Philadelphia Eagles. So sadly, we all know I have Saquon Barkley on my team, but I'm going to have to rank him behind Devon Achane this week. Barkley hasn't been nearly as good as he was last season. The main reason for this is we just simply haven't had any big plays from Saquon Barkley. Like so far this year, he has not had a single game where he has scored 20 fantasy points. Like I still think that they're coming. I still think we're eventually going to get the big plays. He's averaging less than 4 yards per carry so far this year. And if anything, I feel even more optimistic about my team knowing that I'm 4-0 with Saquon Barkley underperforming, and the better game should be coming in the future. But it's hard to call him an S-tier running back until we start to see that athleticism. And then looking at Amari and Hampton would be an S-tier RB for us going up against Washington, where you actually do have an implied team total of about 25 points here for the Chargers. The issue again is you have no Slater, which we already understood coming into the season. And now on top of this, you have no Joe Alt as well. So this offensive line goes from being one of the best O-lines in the league to, sadly, honestly, a bottom 10 unit. Now moving over to the B tier running backs, Kyren Williams is going to be somebody that you still have to start despite the utilization going down almost every single week. If you look at this on flockfantasy.com, you will see that he's fallen from 72% to 68% to 65%, and now this past week to 50% of his team's carries on a per week basis. But still, this is actually a good matchup now playing the Niners, where with no Brock Purdy, you do currently have Los Angeles heavily favored by about a touchdown here in this Thursday night game. You have Kyren higher, lower, 84.5 total yards going up against San Francisco here on Underdog. Javonte Williams going to be a must-start running back. The backfield's gotten thinned out just a bit, where obviously you have no Miles Sanders playing this week. Javonte's higher, lower, 93.5 total yards. Actually, a better projection than what you have with Kyren. And Javonte, you have the receiving skill set as well, where you've actually seen him come through and he's had at least 3 targets in every single game so far this year, and he's averaging closer to 5. Now, I was surprised to see what people were saying about Jordan Mason in my live stream last night. Like, people are pretending as if Jordan Mason is not a must-start running back every week going into the future still. I understand he was disappointing this past week where he finishes the RB28 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that was a game in which the Vikings trailed from start to finish. It was about the worst game environment you possibly could have had for Jordan Mason, and the man still had 19 opportunities. This week, it's a tough matchup against Cleveland, but the Vikings are projected to win. What we saw last year is the team that stays in Europe for that second game, they're well adjusted, where the team that has to travel that week is kind of at a disadvantage. So I think the Vikings win this. I think they can run the ball in the second half. I don't love the matchup, but until Aaron Jones returns, Jordan Mason's still going to be a must-start running back every single week. If you disagree with that, you can go take the lower than 85.5 total yards on Underdog, which obviously I'll leave the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description comment section. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state. And if you're not already on there, they just dropped the best new user offer that I have seen for the 5 years that I've been working with them. And that's after you play your first $5 with code FLOCK, you are going to get $100 added to your account. You'll get a free pick for that Thursday night game as well. It's going to be like higher, lower, half a total yard for Matthew Stafford. And on top of that, you'll get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams. And I'm going to be live streaming every single night answering questions until Christmas. I'll leave that link in the description and comment section. Now, Derrick Henry is currently sitting here at RB11 for us. This is a very tough spot where Derrick Henry has averaged less than 10 points per game over the past 3 weeks. And with Henry, you now have no Lamar Jackson. So playing Houston here, you have the Baltimore Ravens with an implied team total less than 20 points. I know maybe you want to say, oh, okay, well, they're going to have to run the ball more. The thing with Baltimore is they want to run the ball regardless. Their plan A was going to be run the ball with Derrick Henry regardless of if Lamar was at quarterback or not. But now opposing defenses are going to have a much easier time just stacking the box and stopping Derrick Henry. You still probably got to start him, but I would just lower my expectations. Ashton Jeanty was phenomenal this past week. Ashton Jeanty in this matchup against Indianapolis, I don't love it though, because you actually do have the Raiders as pretty big dogs in this matchup where the Colts are projected to win by about a touchdown. And if we're looking at Jeanty, while he was a phenomenal receiving back in college, you go back to his true sophomore season, he led the country in receiving. So far this year, he has had a total of 20 receiving yards through 4 games. So not super compelling there. And you just had the left tackle getting placed on IR, which is going to make a bad offensive line even worse. Breece Hall has been maybe not the best option this year. His season high is 16.5 fantasy points. He has multiple games with fewer than 10 fantasy points scored. But now that you have no Braylon Allen, the workload's going to be very consistent for Breece. He really only has to compete with Isaiah Davis. And if we're going to look at the matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, obviously this is one of the best potential matchups you could ask for. Now let's move over to our next tier. This is going to be C tier, where Rachaad White's going to lead us off. Now, I don't need to explain to you that if Bucky Irving plays, you move Rachaad White down this list dramatically. But I'm making this ranking under the assumption that you have no Bucky Irving. And we can go back and look at the last season that Rachaad White played with no Bucky, which was actually 2023, where he averaged 15.5 points per game and was the RB10. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would make an argument, are a better team now than they were then. Rachaad White, very capable receiving back. You have no Evans, so they'll probably get forced to actually look to throw to Rachaad White very often. Now, Kenneth Walker will be our next RB. With Kenneth Walker, you have Charbonnet fully healthy in this game. Kenneth Walker over the past 3 weeks has been better. He's had double-digit fantasy points every week. But what's very concerning is the receiving involvement's gone down dramatically. He averaged 4.8 targets per game in 2024. That's fallen to 1.8 targets per game this past season. So, I am a little concerned with this, especially in a matchup that's not great against Tampa with Zach Charbonnet being fully healthy. Now, going over and looking at Chuba Hubbard, it's a garbage offense, garbage quarterback play, and Chuba Hubbard's banged up himself. He's actually scored fewer than 10 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks here, where I do think you need to be concerned somewhat. Cam Skattebo will be the number 2 running back that I'm starting in my lineup this week. I was actually very optimistic with this matchup, thinking that the Giants would be favored heavily here going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. But unless our data on flockfantasy.com is incorrect, I want to say that you actually have the Saints favored in this game, which feels crazy. But let me go ahead and confirm this with another site before I say it's for sure true. But no, the Saints are favored in this game by about 1.5 points. Like, the Giants are going to be dogs in most matchups. I was expecting them to be favored in this one. But regardless, it's going to be a close game. The Giants could very easily win it. So they could be able to go out there and just run the ball consistently. Now, Alvin Kamara will be our next name. If we are looking at Kamara, the receiving involvements fall in dramatically. Alvin Kamara so far this season has a high of 21 receiving yards. Obviously not great. The offense is bad. This matchup against the Giants have a good defensive line. And I'm just kind of hoping that Alvin Kamara ends up getting traded at this point. Travis Etienne's going to be the first player in my flex this week. With Etienne, he's been super consistent. He's the running back 10 in points per game. You've actually seen him come through every single week with at least 14 carries, and he's averaging about 16 and a half. But the issue that I'm going to have with Travis Etienne here is the receiving involvement is just non-existent. Over the past 2 weeks, LaQuint Allen and Byshell Tuden have actually ran more routes. So Travis Etienne is sitting here with a total of 1 receiving yard over the past 2 weeks. And we've seen Byshell Tuden vulture some touchdowns. Now, I know maybe for that reason, you'll want to go ahead and put Quinshon Judkins over Etienne, which I would not fault you for whatsoever. Now, my hesitation in doing so is, while I do believe that Quinshon Judkins looks to be a much more talented running back than Etienne at this point, and while Quinshon Judkins looks to be one of the best running back values in all of fantasy football this year, the difficulty with it is it's a really tough matchup playing the Minnesota Vikings. It's a Europe game. The Vikings have been there for an extra week. So I'm going to be a little more hesitant with Quinshon than I would otherwise. But obviously, he'll be higher in our rankings most weeks after this. Now, Chase Brown will be our next name. If we are looking at Chase Brown, the Cincinnati Bengals offense has been the worst offense in the NFL since Joe Burrow got injured. And that's an obvious statement to make. I understand that everybody hates the fact that I'm still ranking Jamar Chase as a low-end wide receiver 1. I understand that everybody hates the fact that I'm still going to have Chase Brown as somebody that you have to reluctantly start. But I do want to at least point out to y'all that this game is supposed to be right there as the highest scoring game on the week. Sportsbooks are putting the Cincinnati Bengals with an implied team total of 19.5 points. Very similar to last week, where the Atlanta Falcons were coming off a game where they did not score a single touchdown. We looked at sportsbooks. They said, you know what? They're going to be much better in week 4. So I said, oh, okay, well, don't stress. Start London, start Bijan. The Bengals aren't supposed to be good, but they're supposed to be a lot better. I mean, right now, they project score half a point less than the Denver Broncos. So I'm going to go ahead and say that you have to start Chase Brown. The man's had at least 3 targets every single game. He's averaging about 3 receptions a game. He's had double-digit carries in every game that he's played in. Am I in love with it? No. Am I trying to turn into the Cincinnati Bengals guy? Of course not. But while they're very bad with no Chase, they'll be better than they've been. Now, our next name that we're going to be looking at will be J.K. Dobbins. Really tough matchup against Philly. He actually did just see a season low in terms of market share numbers in his offense, where he only had 42% of the carries in Denver. But with that being said, it was a blowout against Cincinnati. I don't think the usage here is much to worry about. Realistically speaking, I think you are just going to see J.K. Dobbins continue to be the starting running back in close games until maybe halfway through the year they decide to look at RJRV a little bit more. Now, Tony Pollard is going to be my 3rd running back or 4th running back in my lineup this week. Yeah, we got Barkley, Etienne, Scat, and Pollard. I currently have Josh Jacobs on bye. So Pollard's going to be in my 2nd flex. With Tony Pollard, he's seeing 90% of the snaps every single week he's played. Now, obviously, that has a lot to do with the fact that Tajee Spears has not played. Once Spears is in, Tony Pollard is no longer going to be startable. He's averaging about 10 fantasy points per game, despite having literally every single touch in his backfield. Now, I don't know if Spears is going to be playing this week. I can look him up on Twitter, see that he's out there practicing. He looks pretty good. if Spears does play, Pollard is going to move beyond Woody Marks, as Woody Marks looked like he was the starting running back in Houston this past week. You actually have Woody Marks with 27.9 fantasy points, 17 carries, 5 targets, 22 opportunities. This is a really good matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, where you can confidently say that this Baltimore Ravens defense at this point is one of the worst defenses in the entire league. And Woody Marks has juice. I don't love the offensive line. I do think that Nick Chubb's still going to be somewhat involved, but Woody Marks is steaming up these rankings, and I can guarantee you, or almost guarantee you, that he'll be ahead of Pollard next week at the very minimum. Now, David Montgomery will be our next running back. This very easily could be a David Montgomery week. Like, we go back 2 weeks ago against the Baltimore Ravens, 29.5 fantasy points. Now, obviously, this past week, only 1.2 was a much tougher matchup against Cleveland. But here, great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, while at the same time, the Lions are favored by about 10 points in this game. Now, going to F tier, this is the range in which if you have to start somebody, rest in peace. Your league mate hopefully is as broken as you are. Zach Charbonnet is startable. Okay. Are you excited about it? Hell to the no. But going up against Tampa here, the Seahawks are favored. Charbonnet did see 12.5 fantasy points this past week. I mean, you had 12 carries, you had 2 targets. I know a lot of people want to get excited about the rushing touchdown, but really Charbonnet should just be viewed as that premium handcuff back, where if Kenneth Walker were to go down, then Charbonnet turns into a league winner. Now, Trevion Henderson is a running back that I was hoping was going to see a much larger role in week 4 after Ramondre, I thought, fumbled away the job in week 3. It just simply didn't happen. He's still a running back that I have no faith in, but this matchup against the Buffalo Bills is one in which Buffalo is heavily favored by over a touchdown. So you'd hope that they lean on the running back that is a quality receiving option. Now, our next option will be Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, Texans are favored in this game with no Lamar. He still did have some work this past week. He had 13 carries. He had 2 targets. Now, Woody Marks out-touched him. Woody Marks looks significantly better than him at this point, but I wouldn't be that surprised if Nick Chubb does disappoint people thinking that Woody Marks is a running back 1 right away. Now, going over and looking at what we have with Ramondre Stevenson, technically he's still the starting running back in New England, but at the same time, I almost want nothing to do with it. Ja'Cory Crosky-Barrett has not been consistent whatsoever. This past week, he got 9 total opportunities. I guess he has been consistently getting 9 to 10 opportunities. This game, Jaden Daniels should be playing, so the Commanders' offense does project out better. Isaiah Pacheco will be our next option. I think you could make a strong argument to put Pacheco at the top of this tier. I know he just scored 12.5 fantasy points this past week, but this coaching staff's also coming through and saying that you actually should expect Brashad Smith to get more involved than he has been so far. So if Brashad Smith is getting involved, then at that point, I think you do have to lower expectations for both Chiefs running backs. Then I'm going to be honest with you, Michael Carter versus Amari DeMercado. Like, DeMercado's supposed to be the receiving back. Michael Carter's supposed to be on first and second downs. Or at least that's what the fantasy football community is speculating as of today, October 1st. You're watching this October 2nd. I hope we get more clarity with this Arizona Cardinals situation. But we did just get a quote saying that Bam Knight's also going to be involved. So here's my thing. These are 3 bad running backs in an offense that's not super inspiring. And all 3 of them could be the lead RB. So I don't want to tell anybody to start Michael Carter. I don't want to tell anybody to start DeMercado. I don't want to tell anybody to start Bam Knight. I think the top 2 guys that we're ranking here should be rostered in all leagues because they realistically could be the starter, and I could be excited to tell you to play them in week 6. But for now, not excited at all. For now, we're not excited at all to tell you to start RJ Harvey, to start Byshell Tootin. Clearly, RJ Harvey looked a lot better this past week against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he sees a career-high 19 opportunities. But again, a lot of those came in garbage time. I still very clearly prefer RJ Harvey over J.K. Dobbins in the long term. It's a matter of time when RJ Harvey is eventually going to turn into the RB1 here, but it may take another month or so. Byshell Tootin, he's in a 3-man running back by committee, and his role's not expanding at all. And then Kareem Hunt, I haven't been a lot of best ball drafts, honestly, with how bad Isaiah Pacheco's been. I would hope that, like Kareem Hunt, all around 18 picks on him, we're going to do well on Underdog, but realistically, Brashad Smith's now expanding his role. Kareem Hunt looks like he has absolutely no juice. Like the Kareem Hunt job is, it's 3rd and 1. Just hand the ball to Kareem Hunt and let Kareem Hunt die between the guards and pick up the first down. Now, our H tier is you are so down bad that you are grasping at straws. And again, I can't even imagine. Sean Tucker looks to be the RB2 with no Bucky Irving. I'd imagine he's second fiddle to Rachaad White. But last time this happened, Sean Tucker had himself a day. Blake Corum is expanding his role in Los Angeles. But over the past 2 weeks, he's averaged 4 points per game. Justice Hill, again, isn't really a running back. Technically, he's designated as an RB, but you're looking at a player with 15 targets in comparison to 8 carries so far this year. Realistically, we probably should move Justice Hill higher than this. Kendre Miller, you're hoping that he's a premium handcuff back if anything were to occur to Kamara, but he did have 11 carries this past week. And then going over and looking at Devin Singletary, I guess he's second fiddle to Cam Scatterbo, where you did get 7 carries this past. If you have to start anybody in G or H tier, GG's. But I really appreciate you. Of course, if you want to, go ahead, check out any of those picks over on Underdog Fantasy. Now is the best time to do so. The reason being is they have the best new user offer that I've seen since I've been working with them for 5 years. It's after you play your first $5, you're going to get $100 added to your account. And on top of that, you'll get a free pick for the Thursday night game. It'll be something like Matthew Stafford, higher, lower, half a total yard. And on top of that, you'll be getting free questions that you can ask me in the live streams. And we are going to be live streaming every single day until Christmas, answering your fantasy football questions. I really appreciate you. And I really hope we get to see you out with a live stream later tonight.